Hi guys, I miss you. We're gonna go ahead and get started with one of my all-time favorite books. This is called Daniel's Story. Go ahead and grab your book and grab a pencil so we can make notes as we read along. The first thing we're gonna look at is the back of the book, okay? And the back of the book is gonna give us a brief summary of what we are about to read. So in class, we've been reading about the Holocaust, and we've been reading a lot about Adolf Hitler and what he did in Germany back during World War II. So this is a historical fiction book, meaning that the story is fiction. Daniel may or may not have existed, but the events that occurred in the story are real. They are true. They are part of history. Okay? So let's look at the back. It says, Daniel barely remembers leading a normal life before the Nazis came to power in 1933. He can still picture once being happy and safe, but memories of those days are fading as he and his family face the dangers threatening Jews in Hitler's Germany in the late 1930s. No longer able to practice their religion, vote, own property, or even work, Daniel's family is forced from their home in Frankfurt and sent on a long and dangerous journey. First to the Lodz ghetto in Poland, and then to Auschwitz, the Nazi death camp. Okay, here they call it the Nazi death camp. So already I know that some people in Daniel's family might end up dying. Though many around him lose hope in the face of such terror, Daniel, supported by his courageous family, struggles for survival. He finds hope, life, and even love in the midst of despair. So here, this part tells me that at some point in the story, Daniel is going to fall in love. Pay attention, Juan. Don't get distracted. Escardo, please keep your eyes on the text. And Alejandro, this is not nap time, okay? This is reading time. Although Daniel is a fictitious character, so here, they're letting us know that he may not have existed. But his story was inspired by the real experiences of many of the more than 1 million children who died in the Holocaust. Daniel's story was published in conjunction with an exhibit called Daniel's Story, Remember the Children at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. All right, so if we look at the map, it tells us that he started in Frankfurt. So this is where he lived in Germany. And the first, when they had to leave Frankfurt, where they first went was Lodz in the country next door, which is Poland. Okay? What has happened to me? I feel just like I did when I was around 10 years old and I got hit by a soccer ball right between the eyes, and I wandered around the field disoriented, not knowing who I was, where I should be going. I feel like that now, stunned and confused. Who am I? Where am I going? So very lightly with your pencil, go ahead and circle the eyes. This is going to tell us the point of view. Okay, so what is the point of view? That's right. It's first person point of view. Okay, so our narrator is Daniel. This much I know. My name is Daniel. I am 14 and I am Jewish. I am on a train with my mother, father, sister, and what looks like over 1,000 other Jews from Frankfurt. We do not have any idea where we are going, only that the Germans no longer want Jews in Germany, my country. Generations of our family have lived here going back 1,000 years, but it looks as if we will be the last. father and mother sit across from me and speak in low voices to each other. My sister Erica, who at 12 is 2 years younger than I, sits beside me, humming a tune to herself, no doubt composing a song for her violin. I bend all over and pull my photo album out of my rucksack. I feel the need to look at my pictures of my life. Perhaps they can help me understand how I came to be on this train, who I am, and what has happened. I open the album to the first page. Okay, so right here, the beginning of the book starts with him being on a train, and then he starts looking at a photo album that he pulls from his backpack, and this is where the story starts, okay? So he is telling us a story about his life starting here. The first picture of my album is that of me on my 6th birthday. Marked on the bottom is March 30, 1933. I am smiling at the camera, all pudgy cheeks and thick black wavy hair, my brand new gleaming toy train on display in front of me. Uncle Peter, my favorite uncle, would have taken this picture. He was the unofficial family photographer. The picture just beneath it is one he took later that day of our whole family. Everyone looks serious because they don't want to appear silly in the photograph. Still, I remember that day. The adults talking and laughing, the hustle and bustle as dinner was being prepared, the smell of freshly baked bread and roasting chicken, and of course, the screaming and noise of all my cousins. I look at each face in the photograph in turn. Uncle Peter isn't in the picture because he was taking it. He was married to Aunt Leah, my mother's older sister, a nurse. She always bossed us around and tried to organize our lives. Uncle Peter and Auntie Leah had 4 children under the age of 5. Frederick, a year younger than I, Mia, age 4, Gertrude, age 2, and Bridget, age 1. The children looked so quiet and well-behaved in the photo, but in reality, they would run, scream, fight, and drive me crazy. I remember the first thing they went for when they got in the door that day was a magnificent castle I had made from my building set. I had labored over it for weeks. So, labor means work. Methodically snapping the pieces together until I thought it was perfect. It was demolished only seconds after their arrival. I want you to circle the word demolish, and I want you to write down the definition very lightly in pencil. Daniel, my mother always said to me just before they came over, you are the oldest. You must hold your temper even if they do things you don't like. When I was 5, I'd bopped Frederick on the arm, hard, for breaking one of my toys. He'd cried, and ever since then, all I'd heard was, "You're the oldest." I looked at the shambles of my castle and felt like bopping them all. Strange, really, that they should be so wild considering how strict Auntie Leah is. Perhaps she is better at controlling other people's children than her own. I can relate to this because you all know I cannot control my kids. I tell you stories. My Santi is a little cray-cray. Also, in the picture is my mother's younger brother, David. He was an engineer and a bachelor, and we usually saw him at dinner time. What does this mean, he was a bachelor? What do you guys think? Circle that word, okay? And then write down a definition. When he just happened to drop by for a visit. Standing beside my father are his 3 brothers. Leo, who came from Berlin with his family. Walter and Aaron and their wives. Sitting on the floor are their children, 3 per family, most around my age or younger. I remember that as the photo was being taken, Uncle Walter and Father were fighting, talking back and forth with clenched teeth so as not to ruin the picture. Palestine is the answer, Joseph. said Uncle Walter to my father. We should all emigrate there. And do they need concert violinists in the Holy Land? Father had replied. No, Walter. They'll put you to work in the fields. Even a new country needs music, Walter retorted, and the Jews need a country of their own. We have a country, Father exclaimed. Our family has lived in Germany for over 600 years. How long does it have to be before you call someplace home? And my family, said Mother, and then the entire family joined in, has been here for almost 1,000 years. Mother turned red. Well, we have. So right here, when Daniel says that the entire family joined in, this lets me know that Mother talks about this all the time. Like, she's constantly telling people, my family has been here for over 10,000 years. Now, think about what we've been reading in class and what Hitler was doing to the Jews during this time. Okay, what was he doing, guys? He was kicking them out of the country for being Jewish. And people, of course, didn't want to leave because they had been there for thousands of years. Auntie Leah spoke up. It never hurts to be reminded. Everyone laughed again. The picture had to be delayed while the adults put their serious faces back on. Oma Rachel and Opa Samuel, my mother's parents, are in the picture too, as is Oma Miriam, my father's mother. Oma Miriam lived in an old folks' home in Frankfurt, but was with us for my birthday. Opa Carl had died 2 years earlier. Right after the picture was finally taken, I remember Auntie Leah began to lecture me. Now, young man, I hope you'll work to deserve such a fine present. I understand your mother has just returned from another trip to see your teacher. It seems to me that she's called to your school at least once a week. She looked at me sternly, and I was so mad I could have kicked her. She was always butting in, and it was so unfair. All I did in school was crack a few jokes and make some funny faces. My classmates thought I was funny, and so did I. Why did my teacher, Mr. Schneider, have to be so sour? He always looked like he'd sucked on a lemon just before coming into the classroom. Leah, it's his birthday, Mother protested. I know, Auntie Leah replied, but you're too soft on him. He should realize how hard these meetings are on you. Well, if Mr. Schneider wasn't so mean and stupid, I'd behave better, I declared defiantly. Auntie Leah looked like she wanted to run over and cover her children's ears. They were all listening with great interest. You must show respect for your teachers, Daniel, she scolded. Pongan atención. You must show respect for your teachers. Why? They don't show respect for me, I shot back. At that point, Uncle Peter intervened. Who wants birthday candies? He asked with a smile. I loved Uncle Peter. I wish you were my teacher, Uncle Peter, I said, giving him a kiss as he handed me a huge piece of chocolate toffee. I'd never be bad in your class. No, Daniel, I'm sure you wouldn't. I agree with you. Mutual respect is very important. Then he whispered in my ear, but just to make things easier for your poor mother, maybe you could pretend a little respect? I giggled, and he gave me a wink. That made me feel so grown up that I decided to try it. Not that I could always control myself, but after that, my mother visited Mr. Schneider every month or so instead of every week. Let's look at this right here. I giggled, and he gave me a wink. This whole conversation and this part right here reveal details about Daniel's relationship with his Uncle Peter. So keep that in mind, okay? I stare at the next page and the next picture. Uncle Peter took 2 days after my birthday. It shows my father's hardware store. My father had a very successful business. People came to his store from all over, not so much for his merchandise, but for his advice. He knew how to fix anything and always took the time to show the people who came in what the best tools would be for a specific job. There was also a large section of household items like pots and pans and knives, and he would discuss the advantages of one over another with his customers as seriously as if they were deciding the fate of the world. That's why his customers would never consider shopping anywhere else, even if the price was a little cheaper. My mother worked in the back of the shop, doing all the accounting. I stare at the picture. Across the front window, written in large letters, is the word Jew. I still remember when I first saw it. I was so confused. Jew. What was wrong with that? I went to a regular public school, and most of my friends at school weren't Jewish, but that didn't matter. It was just a different religion. We lit candles on the Sabbath and went to synagogue, a Reform synagogue where the service was mostly in German and celebrated Jewish holidays. They celebrated Christian holidays, so what? But that day, there wasn't only writing on the window. There was a stormtrooper. Father said he was called a brown shirt because of the brown shirt of his uniform, and he was standing outside the door of the shop with a gun. I had run there to help in the store, and then I didn't know what to do. I was scared. Why do you guys think that that man with the gun was standing outside the door? What do we know about this time of history? What was happening with Jewish businesses? I thought that maybe the stormtrooper would shoot me if I got close. He looked so mean. And then Mrs. Warner came around the corner. She walked very slowly because she had to use a cane. She walked up to the man and said, "Excuse me, please." The brown shirt looked at her and replied, "All Jewish shops are being boycotted. You can't go in there." Boycotted. This is going to be one of your vocab words. Mrs. Werner tapped his boot with her cane. "Now you listen to me, young man. I walked a long way to get here. I'm 90 years old. Don't you tell me what I can and can't do." And the brown shirt stepped aside. I ran up to her and took her hand, and we went in together. "Daniel," my father cried, "Mrs. Werner, you shouldn't have come. He might have hurt you." "Nonsense," she replied, and then went about her business. All she needed was a light bulb. I think back to that incident now, and I wonder if the madness could have been stopped then. What if Father's regular customers had insisted, like Mrs. Warner, on being allowed in? Mrs. Warner wasn't Jewish, and she didn't care that we were. But how many people had the courage to walk up to a young man holding a gun? What if he should shoot? So this whole paragraph right here, this really is why the Holocaust happened, because no one really had the courage to stand up for the less fortunate. They didn't have the courage to stand up for the Jewish. The next day, the brown shirt was gone, and Uncle Peter came to the store to take the picture. As we stood on the street gazing at the shop, I asked him to explain what was happening. "Have you heard of a man called Adolf Hitler?" Uncle Peter said. "Of course," I replied, insulted. "Who is he?" "He is the Chancellor of Germany," I replied. "Yes, Daniel, you mean Chancellor, appointed by President Hindenburg. His party, the National Socialist Party, they are called Nazis, has lots of seats in parliament. Hitler has changed the constitution so that he now rules us. He can do anything he wants, Daniel, and the German people are happy to let him. They think he can solve all their problems of unemployment and that he can stop the fighting." I nodded knowingly. I'd seen people fighting in the streets. But why won't they let people shop in our store? I asked. That's a good question, Daniel. Hitler wants someone to blame all of Germany's troubles on, and he's decided it will be the Jews and anyone else that isn't a pure German of the Aryan or master race. I've heard they've opened up camps. They call them concentration camps, where they're putting all his enemies, communists, socialists, gypsies, Jews, anyone who disagrees with him and anyone he doesn't like. And they are making sure everyone has heard of these camps, so people do not protest for fear of getting arrested too. But I said, how can everyone love him so much if he's so mean? I thought of the huge rallies Father had told me about, where tens of thousands cheered Hitler, and of the torchlight parades I'd seen many nights, in which his followers would march through town singing. I often felt like running out and joining the parades. They always looked so exciting. People think he will make Germany strong again, give it back its dignity. Come, let's go help your father wash that sign off. The boycott of Jewish stores lasted only 3 days, and like any 6-year-old, I quickly forgot all about it and went back to my happy life. My mother and father must have started to worry then, but they hid it well, and I had other things to worry about, such as whether or not I would make the school soccer team and if I could convince Father to buy me the beautiful model car that was displayed in the shop window next to his. All right, guys, on Canvas, I'm going to have some questions for you. So make sure you complete those. And don't get used to me reading every chapter for you because I'm going to have you read. How about that? All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.